I caught my wife did it with my best friend. She even had the nerve to send me Bible verses on forgiveness. I met my wife, we'll call her Sue, in college. We were both 18 at the time. We hit it off as soon as we went on our first date and were spewing I love yous within weeks of us dating. She kind of pursued me, but I was glad as hell that she did. We shared our deepest insecurities and secrets with each other. And when her dad passed away in her senior year of college, I was there for her through the whole ordeal. Her father had pancreatic cancer, and when he was hospitalized, I'd spend nights at the hospital with her so she wouldn't be alone. We got through it, and that point in time strengthened our bond. She told me she didn't know what she would have done if I hadn't been there for her. She called me her soulmate. I knew I was going to marry this girl, and sure enough, I popped the question about 2 years after we graduated. At that point in time, life couldn't get any better for me. I married the girl of my dreams, had a well-paying job immediately after graduating, and both our families loved us. My best friend, we'll call him Dav, and I had what I could only describe as an unbreakable brotherly bond, or so I thought. We had known each other since 3rd grade, and he was the brother I never had. He was also married and moved away with his wife because she had landed a lucrative job at a big law firm. About a year ago, his wife passed in a car crash, and this broke him. He moved back to our hometown after, but he was never the same. I tried to be there for him, but he wouldn't engage with anyone. No one understood the pain he was going through, so I asked my wife if she could talk to him, seeing as she had also lost a loved one and that maybe Dav could relate better with someone who went through something similar. Yes, I know now that this was a huge mistake. We'd pay him visits daily. She would spend hours on end at his place even without me there. They were going on hikes together, watching movies, and not inviting me, grabbing lunch, all things couples do. Now, obviously, this was far more interaction than I had intended for them to have, and it did make me uncomfortable, but Dav was doing much better from it. It's important to say that Dav and Sue never liked each other before all this happened. This is because Sue always thought he was a douche. Before he married his wife, Dave was bouncing from relationship to relationship, and even after he got with his deceased wife, he constantly cheated on her. As a result, Sue had a particular dislike for him and always questioned how I could be friends with someone with such low morals. This disdain for Dav is also what made me oblivious to what was to come. As I mentioned, Sue and Dav became inseparable, to the point where she would invite him to things I had planned for us as a couple. Moreover, she started portraying characteristics of what I now know to be classic cheater behavior. Always on her phone, becoming increasingly distant, little to no intimacy, and coming home very late. At this point, it was all too suspicious, and one day she was texting, and I asked who she was talking to. She said it was one of her girlfriends, and when I asked to see what they were saying, she became very irritated and called me possessive. When I talked to Dave about how uncomfortable their friendship was making me, he assured me nothing was up and even accused me of not trusting him and my own wife. I was getting gaslit. This continued until one day Sue went out again. She said she was going to her sister's for the weekend because she needed some space from me, because I was driving her crazy with my accusations. I was still very suspicious and called her sister to confirm that she was indeed expecting Sue to visit. She confirmed that she was, but that Sue had not yet arrived. Mind you, she had left around 3 p.m. and her sister's place is about 4 hours away from where we live. It was now 10 p.m. Something in the back of my head told me to go to my friend's house, so I did. Sure enough, my wife's car is parked a couple of feet away from my friend's house. At this point, it was clear as day as to what was going on, and I hate to admit it, but I cried hard. After a few minutes, I decided to go in and see if this is really what was happening. I went in through the back door, which I knew would be open. I quietly made my way in, and I could hear my wife moaning. I was shaking. When I made it to the door of his bedroom, I could see through the creak. My wife bent over on his nightstand. I'll never get that image out of my head. I'm literally crying as I'm writing this down. I pushed the door wide open, and they both froze, staring at me. It took every ounce of my being not to beat the living hell out of Dav. I just walked away and got into my car. I could hear them scrambling, and my wife started screaming at me to stop and that she can explain. I didn't want to look at her. I don't know what I would have done, so I just drove away. I cried the entire drive home, and they were both spamming me with calls. I went to one of my college friends and have been here the past week or so. I can't eat, I can't sleep, and I can't think of anything else. I informed my work of what was going on, and they were kind enough to give me time off. I've been getting phone calls from both Dav and Sue, as well as both our families. I let my family know I was alright and would be back soon, but I haven't responded to anyone else ever since. This hurts so bad. I'm trying to be strong, but my resolve is wavering. How can someone you loved so selflessly do this? I don't know what to do. How do I deal with this? I'm currently looking at getting a divorce lawyer to weigh out my options. My friend recommended one who he described as a shark. Gave her all the details, and she seems to be very motivated to help me come out of this as financially whole as possible. Given the circumstances, I still love my wife dearly, but I don't know if this is something I can get over. I received lots of messages from Dab too, but I don't want to read them. I often switch from sorrow to rage and don't know how to feel right now. My family knows everything. Apparently, Sue confessed what she had done to everyone. I've been away from everyone for more than 2 weeks now, and I still don't know what to do. The pain still feels fresh. Every time I close my eyes, I can see nothing else but Sue and Dave together, and the pain doesn't seem to be lessening. I know most of you are saying to just divorce, and I would say the same thing too, but things aren't that black and white when you are the one in this situation. Given all this new info, I'd appreciate any advice, particularly from people who've been here. Betrayed spouses and waywards, how did you manage to move past this? Is it even possible? Right now, I'm almost certainly going to move on with the divorce, but I just need reassurance that I'm making the right decision. I've read all your comments and felt I needed to add this. I was told by her, as well as family and friends, that she has been living with her sister the past few weeks. In one of her emails, she explained that she has only spoken to Dav once since I found out and went full NC with him. Her mother called me and apologized for her daughter's behavior via text. I didn't pick up her calls. She said Sue is in individual counseling at the moment. In another one of her emails, she said she was never going to leave me for Dav. She has feelings for him, but she doesn't love him. Dave is supposedly leaving soon, but is apparently holding it off until he speaks to me face to face. There's a lot of other stuff I haven't addressed, and I'm probably leaving out some details, but some of my family and friends are saying I should just talk to her and move on from there. That's where I'm at now, so I took some time off of Reddit and other social media to reflect on my marriage and the steps I was going to take moving forward. I was getting lots of advice from the kind people on here, as well as family and friends. However, I wasn't sure what I really wanted. A lot has happened since then, so this might be a novel. Bear with me. When I look back on the marriage, most of it was filled with little else but happy memories, which is why I was trying so hard to find a reason to stay. However, when I started thinking about her cheating, how she and Dave gaslit me and made me question my sanity, the only thing I felt was rage. The deeper I looked, the angrier I got. I will never forget how angry Sue would get when I questioned her on where she'd been when she came home late, or the disgusting look Dave gave me when I asked him, man to man, if there was anything going on between him and my wife. The cheating was bad enough, and even worse was that it was with my best friend, but the gaslighting, the ducking gaslighting, I will never get over it. Fair enough, I was played like the fool I was, but it takes a special kind of person to lie so effortlessly and so well. I don't know how they were able to flip the switch like that. I remember one night when she came home late. About 2 days before I found out, she was telling me how much she loved me and how orny she was when she was driving home thinking about me. Now, I am almost certain she had come home from Dave's because she wasn't wearing any panties. She had sex with both of us back to back. I ducking kissed her. This whole situation made me feel like a wimp. How could I have let them walk all over me like that? I feel so emasculated. The more I reflected, the more I got the urge to head over to Dave's, but I couldn't. There is no justice for me, not with our justice system. They get to torment me, as only mentally, but if I retaliate, I'm the one who gets put in jail for who knows how long. I spoke with my lawyer about this, and she urged me not to do anything stupid. Not only would I go to jail, but I would jeopardize my chances in the divorce proceedings. She suggested I see a therapist, but I don't want to. I don't see the need. I was still getting spammed with emails from Sue, and they were just making me angrier. She was still spewing the same nonsense as before, and how miserable her life would be without me. She even had the nerve to send me Bible verses on forgiveness. If I mattered that much, why do it? I started going to work again because I wanted to be busy. Being distracted has really helped me cope better, and I don't drink as much as I was at the beginning. One day while at work, I received a letter from Sue. I wanted to just throw it away but decided to read it. In it, She talked about her individual counseling and how it helped her discover some underlying issues she was having with herself, the biggest of all being her low self-esteem. She explained that the discrepancy in our attractiveness made her very self-aware and that deep down she wanted to feel desired by someone other than me. According to her, her sister has always been much prettier than her, and this contributed to her low self-esteem. She said that even though she knew I was attracted to her and that I made her feel beautiful, she sought that validation from someone else. She apologized again and said it wasn't an excuse, but that she was simply looking for a way to make sure it never happens again, should I decide to give her another chance. She then proceeded to ask if we could try marriage counseling to work things out. I still didn't respond to anything she or her family sent me at this point, so I just ignored it. Anyway, I started the divorce proceedings, and the first order of business was splitting our finances, and unfortunately, I couldn't untangle myself from her without her consent. We each have separate accounts, as well as a joint savings account, and unfortunately, I can't take what I'm entitled to from it without her. Even though I make significantly more than she does, and have contributed the most of the money in that account, I'll probably have to split it with her 50/50. So I just proceeded with filing the divorce papers. She was served a few weeks ago, and then the monkey show started. The very day she was served, she showed up at my apartment with the divorce petition in her hands. I don't know how she found out where I was. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever, and all the pain from that night came back. All the emotions I felt returned with renewed vigor. I almost teared up again, but I didn't. She looked like she had been crying and she rushed towards me and tried to give me a hug. I gently pushed her away, and this somehow made her hysterical. She started shouting, asking why I was giving up on us so easily, and if we could just talk it out. At this point, I figured I just wanted to get away from her. Looking at her gave me a wave of different emotions, so I wanted to get away before I did or said anything I would regret. I tried going back to my car, and she threw herself on the top of the hood. I asked her what she wanted, and she said she just wanted to talk things through, that we couldn't end our marriage in such a manner without at least clearing the air. I relented because she was clearly not taking no for an answer and was making a scene. We got into my apartment, and I just sat down and listened to what she had to say. Again, she said she would do anything to save our marriage, that she doesn't love Dave, that she's sorry. She said she did some research on how we can move forward and suggested a trial separation. In this separation, she said I could date whoever I wanted, but that I should hold off on the divorce and at the very least give her the chance to mend our friendship and then our relationship as husband and wife. She suggested a lot of other crazy stuff like a one-sided open marriage in my favor, tried showing me stories of other couples who have survived infidelity, and even suggested that we should just move to a different state or even a different country, just the two of us. That part kinda hurt me because we had spoken about moving and starting our family not too long before all this happened. When she was done, we just sat there in silence, again just staring at each other, and then I asked her why. Why him? Why cheat on me with him and then come back only after I caught her? She started sobbing really hard when I asked these questions. She said she felt really guilty even during the acts, but that she didn't know how to stop. That she was so deep in the affair that he didn't think of the consequences and what she was going to lose. She said that the counseling made her realize that she probably would have cheated on me at some point, if not with Dave then with someone else. This was supposed because of the same underlying issues that she was making me uneasy. Then it came out. She said she found out she was pregnant not long after I had left and that she got an abortion because she wasn't sure who the father was. She said she thought if it turned out to be Dave's, there would be no room for reconciliation, and she felt she had to do it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was in shock, and she started begging even more not to let this be the end of our relationship. I just went numb. I asked her to leave, and she begged me to stay. That we still needed to talk. All this begging was simply infuriating, coupled with the news I just heard. I asked her how far along she was when she found out she was pregnant, and she said a few weeks. Then it hit me. Wait, you said in an email that you only started having sex with Dave about a week before I found out. Was that a lie? She nodded. She fucking nodded. She explained that she only said that because she didn't want to hurt me with the details and was trying to minimize it. She confessed that it was physical for less than a month. She tried to console me, but I pushed her away. I asked her to leave and never come back. She tried saying something, but I just started yelling at her to leave. She asked if we could talk again once I processed everything, and I refused. I told her that I had found a job in another state and would be moving as soon as the divorce was underway. In our state, there is a 2-month cool-off period after you file. I had already planned on doing this and was just finalizing everything before I resigned from my current job. I had already given my boss a notice at that point. When she heard us, it was more of the same crying and pleading like before. I told her to leave or I would call the police. She reluctantly left, and I just lay on the floor wondering where I went wrong. How did my marriage get to this point in such a short period of time? I just couldn't understand it. I was somewhat sure of the divorce before, but after she and I spoke, I was now more sure of my decision than ever before. I ignored all efforts on Sue's end for contact again. However, a few days ago, this was on Thursday, I received a phone call from my mom that Sue was in the hospital. Apparently, she was hospitalized for pills overuse. This all felt like a nightmare. I still don't know how to process all of this. Why is all of this happening? I visited Sue in the hospital and she seemed to be okay, but she was checked into a psych ward. That's where things are at now. I still have no idea why she would do this, and the time I visited her, she was asleep. It hurts cause I still love her, and right now, I'm just happy she's okay. I hadn't been thinking of the divorce given what's going on right now. How do I even proceed? There's probably a lot of important details I'm leaving out, but adding them will just make this unbearably long. I just need suggestions on what I should do next. I was hoping my last update would be my last post relating to this matter, but here I am again. It's been about 8 months since my life turned into a monkey show, and unfortunately for me things just keep getting worse. I'm not going to go into detail, but I hope I can give enough to get some constructive feedback from you on here. You've been far more helpful than you know. The last time I posted, Sue was in a pretty bad mental state, and fortunately, she got better after some therapy. I felt really bad for her, but I knew I couldn't stay. I know a lot of people have made it through this kind of stuff, but I know myself. Had I stayed, I'd only be doing myself and her more harm than good. I'll never get over it, and will probably harbor some resentment even a couple of years from now. We agreed to divorce, but she wanted us to remain in contact even if it was just minimal. The divorce process was pretty smooth, and we got divorced about a month ago. I moved to the West Coast to start anew and things were finally starting to look good for me. But then I got a phone call about Sue again from her sister. And long story short, Sue suffered from a stroke. She is almost completely immobile on the left side of her body and can barely speak. I can't even put into words how devastating that was to hear, let alone how crushed I felt when I went to visit her. She looked nothing like the person I knew, and she'd always cry when she saw me. One of the worst parts about all this is I can't help but feel like it's my fault this happened to her. People tell me it isn't, but I feel like it is. Even though her closest family says it's not my fault, I can sense some hostility from them whenever I speak to them. Her aunt cussed me out in front of everyone when she saw me, and they were all silent. They just asked me to leave it alone and get on with my life. As much as I wish I could just move on, it still hurts knowing how all this turned out. I haven't spoken to Sue since she got the stroke, and her family won't let me see her cause. Apparently, I cause her stress. I don't even know the full details because I don't have the right to know now. I just can't seem to catch a break. F me, I guess.